July 17, 1944. Explosive inequality. An explosion occurred at the Port Chicago Naval Magazine in California that marked one of the deadliest home front disasters during World War II. Located about 30 miles northeast of San Francisco, Port Chicago served as a key ammunition loading facility for the Pacific Theater. The disaster killed 320 sailors and civilians, injured 390 others, and sparked national attention on racial inequalities within the U.S. Navy. The incident had far-reaching consequences on military procedures, labor rights, and the desegregation of the armed forces. The explosion took place at 10:18 p.m. when the Liberty ship SS E.A. Bryan and the SS Quinault Victory were being loaded with ammunition. The cargo included over 4,600 tons of high-explosive bombs, depth charges, and other ordnance. Eyewitnesses reported two sudden explosions that lit the sky and were felt as far as San Francisco. The blast destroyed both ships, leveled the pier, and caused widespread structural damage across the facility. It remains the worst domestic loss of life during World War II in terms of immediate casualties in a single incident. Of the 320 people killed, 202 were African American sailors who had been assigned to ammunition loading duties. These sailors, often untrained in handling munitions, were ordered to work long shifts under poor safety conditions. No white officers or personnel were assigned to these tasks, reflecting a broader pattern of racial segregation and inequality in the U.S. military. At the time, the Navy was officially segregated, and African American sailors were typically confined to menial or labor-intensive roles. In the aftermath of the explosion, the Navy faced intense scrutiny. Investigations failed to pinpoint a specific cause for the disaster, though many cited unsafe loading practices, inadequate training, and poor supervision. Instead of recognizing these systemic failures, the Navy resumed loading operations within weeks. When 258 African American sailors refused to continue loading ammunition under the same unsafe conditions, the Navy charged 50 of them with mutiny. These sailors became known as the Port Chicago 50. The Mutiny trial, held in September 1944 at the Navy's base on Treasure Island, was controversial. All 50 men were convicted, despite questions raised about the fairness of the trial. The defense argued that the sailors had not mutinied but had refused to work under dangerous conditions without proper training or safety measures. Future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, then an NAAP attorney, observed the proceedings and publicly condemned the trial as racially biased and legally flawed. The Port Chicago explosion and the subsequent mutiny trial had a profound impact on military policy. The incident drew public attention to racial discrimination in the armed forces and galvanized support for reform. In 1946, the Navy began to desegregate its forces, becoming the first branch of the U.S. military to take such steps. The events at Port Chicago are widely recognized as a catalyst for that shift. The legacy of the Port Chicago disaster has been memorialized in various forms. In 1994, the site was designated as the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial. In 2019, the California State Legislature unanimously passed a resolution urging the U.S. Congress to exonerate the Port Chicago 50. Though their convictions still stand, the case continues to be a powerful symbol of the fight for racial justice within the military and broader American society. The Port Chicago explosion remains a defining moment in U.S. history. It exposed the dangers of racial segregation, the consequences of poor labor practices, and the limits of justice in wartime America. The lives lost and the legal injustice that followed prompted institutional change that echoes through the present. The event stands as a sobering reminder of the human cost of inequality and the enduring struggle for fair treatment under the law. For enthusiasts of historical ephemera, visit history-collectors.com to find collectibles that might complement your collection. You can own a piece of history.